more cryptocurrency trading goes on in Nigeria than almost anywhere else globally, reflecting a loss of faith in more traditional forms of investment. A Bitcoin trading platform, Paxful, puts Nigeria as the second only to the US for Bitcoin trading, making it the first in Africa. The dollar value of crypto received by users in Nigeria in May was $2.4 billion, up to about $684 million last December. That's according to blockchain research firm Chain Analysis. Check this out on Nigeria's cryptocurrency business as of 2020. You could see that on your screen, 1.1 million cryptocurrency trades per month in Nigeria. On the Paxful platform, $65 million traded each and every month, as well as $100 million was spent on each transaction on average. And of course, $250 million was the average spent on each trade in the US. And of course, the accurate scale of crypto flows through Africa's largest economy is likely to be much more larger than what we're seeing on our screens, with many trades untraceable by analysts, especially with the federal government not regulating the market proper. Well, let's bring in a research and development economist based in Nigeria, Gospel Obele. And of course, we're so grateful, Gospel, that you could join us. How do you interpret the surge in crypto transactions in Nigeria?
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me. It's quite a very interesting conversation, and it calls for worry to an extent, because what we see now is just an interplay of two things. Very much more, number one, poor regulation and lack of financial systems development to a large extent, positioned to be able to catch up with global dynamics and global trend. Secondly, is an economy that is heavily driven by trade activities, as well as some level of consumption activities. And that would mean that because we do not have a strong productive base, as it were, people would naturally, or businesses would naturally resort to importation, or engagement within and across the borders to a large extent. So that would call for a lot of foreign exchange sourcing and all of that. And being the recent dynamics of the global space, we realize that FX receipts and FX earnings within the Nigerian context has dropped drastically. So crypto presents a digital currency alternative, or an alternative currency option for people to both do business, either legally or illegally. So that's just the two bases upon which the hike of transactions in the crypto space are based in Nigeria.
So how is the federal government soaking this all in? Because recently we did know that there have been some ban on some of the coins, if not all of them. And of course, we're also learning about the e-Naira, which is going to be introduced by the Nigerian federal government. How is government really responding to this out-of-control currency?
All right, to a large extent, the response has been from the monetary policy, the central bank. And so far, I would say that the nature of response has been more drastic and probably out of touch with context to a large extent than realistic. But then realistic can also be relative when you look at it within the context of national security issues and illicit capital inflows, through the cryptocurrency market. So yes, as we all know, the crypto market was banned in February this year, 2021, and just about a week or 2 weeks ago, some fintechs were banned as well. So a lot of harsh and pretty much insensitive policies have been rolled out towards key initiatives or stakeholders in the fintech space. What we would have loved to see would have been a proper understanding, a proper show of understanding of the crypto market and an attempt to regulate. Because with the rise of the e-Naira digital currency option, it now makes it look as though the central bank is trying to monopolize the market and not really position itself to compete or to enable healthy competition for financial systems development. So it's quite worrisome on one hand, but it's also understandable that the central bank intent cuts across cutting down illicit financial flows.
But here in Ghana, the central bank insists that crypto trade is illegal, just as Nigeria.
High-level institutions already accept payment in school fees through cryptocurrencies. Some other markets are dealing with crypto from a commodities angle, some others from an assets angle. So different monetary economies are already trying to question how best do we regulate, all right? And quite technically, you cannot regulate what you don't understand, all right? But in the African context, what we've seen that we lack the ability to do a deep dive, rigorous understanding of technological changes, especially as it affects the structural dynamics of the monetary economy in the sense. So yes, the action has been pretty much consistent, all right? Trying to take off or describe crypto as illegal, and on the other hand, trying to introduce an e-currency by the government born from that ban, all right, as a substitute, and in many ways looking more like a monopolistic market, because at the end of the day, they're trying to ban fintechs in that space as well. So I would want to recommend that central banks could look into that because it's here to stay to a large extent. And there are many forces that are also driving the demand for crypto. The fact that they've banned it in different markets doesn't necessarily mean that trade activities are not going on. It's still going on in the large, especially in the large parallel market space. So a lot has to be done, all right, to understand this and understand how best to manage or regulate that technological innovation or disruption vis-a-vis e-currencies.
As a research and development economist, I do know that you have, a wider scope on how economic markets are shifting across the SAP region. But what role could crypto play in the continental free trade?
Quite honestly, crypto has been able to build a level of singular markets, all right, when it comes to digital currency use and trade across borders. And this is the major philosophy upon which the AFCFTA hinged on, facilitating trade across borders within and outside within the African economy to a large extent. Now, one of the major issues that the AFCFTA also present is the potential opportunity for a singular currency, all right, in the African market, just like you have the euro for the Eurozone. And we all know that because of the different developmental stages of financial markets in different African countries, that may be impossible in the short term and very much more difficult even in the long term. So technically, the idea of crypto or e-currency can become a reasonable alternative, all right, to reaching that level of synchronization, sort of, all right, to facilitate trade activities across borders. But we now need to agree, because every country in this context is trying to introduce their own e-currency.
Exactly.
All right. And on the alternative, crypto has positioned as singular currency. So we need to agree on what dynamics we want to go with when it comes to e-currency management and e-currency economy. Not forgetting that the SMEs who will be involved, the businesses and players who will be involved in the AFCFTA need to be onboarded correctly in terms of digitalization of that economy to ensure that this works to a large extent vis-a-vis the AFCFTA. Those are the concerns.
So finally, Gospel, where do we see the prospect of cryptocurrency within the African perspective, especially when we are lagging behind with regulation and a clear appreciation of the technicalities regarding the value chain of this blockchain technology? Where do we see the prospect?
Cryptocurrency is here to stay. Quite honestly, the prospects are low because central banks are now taking active steps to develop their own home market e-currencies. And we also need to state here clearly that the fact that you now have an e-currency does not take out the fact that the productive base of the economy is not yet informed, all right, informed enough to determine the value of that currency. Take, for instance, the e-naira doesn't necessarily mean that the naira appreciates because there's not an in-naira option. All right, so we need to still go back to the structural fundamentals, and the leakages as a result of this indiscipline or lack of fixing the structural deficit is what has led to the growth of alternative currencies like crypto. All right, so it's basically trying to do the dirty work in quotes of understanding the market enough to incorporate it within the context of the e-currency revolution, all right, and how best to ensure that market players are in sync with these development dynamics. But that's also to state that these pockets of e-currencies also have the potential to develop the African economy at a very huge scale.
Gospel, we're so grateful that you joined us, and we shall have more of analysis in subsequent bulletins. Many thanks once again. He is a research and development economist based in Nigeria.